I think we can start. So thank you all for being here. I have here with us Simon, the CEO of CaskTrade, our partner, as you know, long-term partner that supplies whiskey investments for us. And we are going to cover how whiskey investment can enhance portfolio diversification. So in terms of the agenda, we'll have a little bit of an introduction about Konvi, and then we are going to go straight into the Q&A. So just quick disclaimer that Konvi does not provide financial advice. So we are a marketplace that connects you, our investors, with asset suppliers that specialize in their asset class, such as CaskTrade here. And of course, we do not guarantee returns. So past returns do not guarantee future earnings. And this webinar is for educational purposes. We have here Simon, the CEO and founder of CaskTrade. So Simon brings quite a lot of experience in whiskey investment, has founded CaskTrade over 5 years ago already, so quite established in the space. They are one of the leaders in whiskey investment, and they're operating from London. So we are here in London at their office, and you can see in the background quite a few bottles. We are going to cover a bit more about that later in the webinar. We've been working with CaskTrade already for over 2 years. CaskTrade currently has proven with their past data, has achieved a historical appreciation of 14% per annum. So of course we cannot predict future returns, but we can look at the past. And CaskTrade has done a great job with their expertise sourcing and selling whiskey for profit. And we should definitely look into more detail about not only the performance, but also how we are seeing the whiskey investment market to evolve. So just quick introduction to Konvi and how we work. We are a platform that connects you, our investors, with investment vehicles that generally are focused on one specific asset class. So in this case, we are talking about whiskey. And we, as a connector between you and the investment vehicle, we help pull people together to be able to co-invest into these assets that previously were only available for high net worth individuals. As you can expect, many high net worth individuals do invest in barrels of whiskey, but since it's not accessible, us people like me didn't have access to it until now, where together we can purchase them. In terms of how we select our suppliers, we do look at the past performance, so that's what differentiates us into this market. We do look at assets, luxury items, and specifically the category of exotic assets that are uncorrelated to the stock market and other public market investments. Our goal is to provide a diversification opportunity to those who do want to find assets that perform differently than stocks and bonds and so on, or other investments that you may have in your portfolio. And as you know, private investors, large investors are investing more and more into alternative assets, so private investments. And exotic assets is part of it. It hasn't been available until recently, but now it's becoming more and more popular. In terms of how we work, so we launch funding projects on our Konvi app, and you as a customer can explore these investment opportunities. These investment opportunities focus on a supplier that is able to purchase and sell assets. And should you like this opportunity, you can subscribe to it. Once the asset is fully funded, then the supplier selects the best asset for the price that was raised. So we do not, take a hidden margin. We send all of your money, and once the money is funded, the best thing that can be purchased is purchased. After the purchase, there is a fixed appreciation period. And that ranges between 3 to 5 years currently on the Konvi app. For whiskey, 5 years is a more appropriate period. So we have been doing 5 years. And in this period, the asset is stored and insured safely. So in the case of whiskey, we store asset. Well, CaskTrade helps us store assets at the London City Bond, and they're fully insured. And in that period, the asset, if a buyer is found at an appropriate price, the asset can be sold earlier. And once the asset is sold, the money is returned to you, the co-owners. So legally, you are the co-owners of the asset. So in terms of why do people invest, there are three main reasons. So first of all, we are talking about asset-backed investments. So you are not investing in the future return of a company on the stock market. You are not saying Tesla is going to grow 100x, and because of that, you're investing at a certain valuation. You're not betting on people that would be able to maybe perform in a certain way. You are buying an item that is rare, and because it is rare or it requires time to mature, in the case of whiskey, it has the appreciation potential. So that's a physical item that you own. In terms of performance, so the second reason would be that it can outperform the stock market. On our platform, we do have historical yearly appreciation between 11 to 35% per annum, which is in many cases outperforming the stock market. And lastly, it's not only about performance, but also diversification. So in the case you want to exit a certain asset, if the stock market is down, this is an opportunity to exit while still not exiting the assets that maybe are lower value than you would be comfortable selling for. So that is all. This is really all. Now I'm going to hand over to Simon, who's going to cover quickly the CaskTrade strategy.
Nice to meet you all, and thank you for listening to me for a little bit of time. I don't come from a whiskey background. I've been a whiskey fan for 28 years. I've bought and sold many thousands of bottles. In fact, I stopped selling about 18 years ago. I buy and sell casks. And I come from an IT background, a property background, and an agricultural background. But I've always loved whiskey, so I've always been a massive fan of whiskey. And I got to know a lot of people in my travels to Scotland. I got to know a lot of people at the various different distilleries, some of the producers, and I began to appreciate the different variety in whiskey. So essentially what I'm saying is that I was an investor before I started the company. And I enjoyed not only tasting the whiskey, but also investing in it. And in 2018, I decided to get into the whiskey business, mainly casks. And one of the main reasons I got into casks is because if you collect as many bottles as I do, you'll know that from an administration point of view, it's a very difficult thing to do, especially from an investment point of view. And it was easier to buy and sell casks than it was for bottles. I got all my licenses up front with the United Kingdom government, including all my licenses in Scotland. I gathered a team of people, including Colin Hamden White, so judges from the whiskey industry, people that used to work for Macallan and William Grant and Glenfarclas, Diageo, so a lot of different people. And I understood one principle from a long time ago, and that it was that whiskey does appreciate in value over age. There are a couple of things that are a little bit different. What I mean by that is when I started in the industry many years ago, it was really industry people that used to buy and sell it. It was quite a closed market. There wasn't many people involved. There were a few whiskey enthusiasts like me that could actually invest in casks, but really not very many people at all. And there were a lot of people that wanted to get involved as an alternative asset. This is all pre-COVID, by the way. So COVID was not a reason or a start for the business. I think the start really came about when people realized, and I made this public, that they could buy and sell whiskey. It was very advantageous from a tax point of view, and that you could buy and sell whiskey under bond, which I can go on to explain, over a number of years. That hasn't changed. It's still the fact. And we can talk about the provenance of the distilleries and why we pick some of the distilleries in the questions. But there is definitely a strategy behind this. It is limited. Joanna actually mentioned a couple of times high net worth individuals. I've had lots of people offer me millions of euros to invest in whiskey, and I can't get it. The point is, if someone's got millions of euros of whiskey and they happen to be from a banking background or they happen to be offering large amounts of money, you can't just go and buy good whiskey that's definitely going to appreciate. It's like any other alternative asset. You've got to make sure that it is something that is more difficult to get hold of, definitely has an end value and an exit, and it's important. You can't really a deal in any of the cheap stuff that's around. I don't sell any blends. I don't sell any grain. I'm selling single malt whiskey from well-known distilleries in Scotland. And there's always a reason. There's always a reason why I would recommend what I recommend. So that kind of gives you an understanding. The market is a long-term market. It's not for investors that want to flip, trade. So for anyone that's a day trader, whiskey's not for you. If anyone wants to buy and sell whiskey, they're more than welcome to do so, but not on this platform. I do recommend around about a 5-year hold, and you pick the year that you start with. So starting with something that's of an age, that's got a decent maturation already, that's only going to get better. It's pretty obvious to some people, but not to others. It needs to reach a significant age. And the reason that you see whiskies in duty free or in retail at particular ages is because it's ready. So you won't see whiskies at 9 or 13. You'll see them at 10 years old, 12, 15 or 16, 18, 21. There are no particular standards measured by the Scottish government or the Scotch Whisky Association that dictate that. But the whiskey reaches a certain maturity date. And for any of you that are on the call today that appreciate whiskey, most of you might notice the difference in taste between something that's quite young and something that's a little bit older. So that's kind of a little bit of background. We have sold many thousands of casks. We are pretty much set up specifically for an exit. Why I say that, there's a lot of people that buy and sell casks in the market that don't concentrate on the exit, but we do. That's the reason that I started the company. As a cask owner myself, I needed to make sure there was a viable exit for all of the casks. That's why I set up 2 other companies called auctionyourcask.com and Regent Street Cask Bottlers. So one sells to bottling companies all over the world, and the other auctions casks. These are 2 viable exits, and these were the casks that Konvi and previously Diversified would exit the casks in a number of years. It's important. So yeah, I'm ready really for any questions that you want to ask. It's only a brief background.
So one of the questions. Currently, CaskTrade has selected several whiskey investments for Konvi investments, investors such as Speyside Barrels, Glenburgie, I hope I'm not messing up the word. Glenburgie, Ben Nevis, 2016. And the question is, as a novice whiskey investor, which whiskey investment opportunity should I pick on the Konvi platform?
Specifically on the Konvi platform, there's quite a nice selection there. I'm going to explain a little bit why I picked those casks. So, for instance, the Speyside Distillery is in Kingussie. It's up near the Cairngorms National Park, a wonderful little distillery. It is officially closing in December. That will make it a silent closed distillery, which is quite exciting for investors. They have always made very good liquid. Speyside Distillery has won many awards. It won a nice award 2 years ago as the best single cask in the world, IWSC awards. They generally bottle stuff anywhere from 5 years old to, I think their oldest is about 30. They've been going since 91. It was a previous distillery before that. But essentially, if you buy something that is 2013, it's got some age already. And typically, exits happen at significant ages with whiskey. If you've got a 10-year fund, then you can buy something that was put into a cask a year ago because you've got 10 years. But if you've got a 5-year fund with micro investors or common investors from a community, you generally want something that you can taste, that you can see how it's going. And that's why I picked the Speyside 2013s. For the simple reason, they're at least 10 years old, as we know. Some of them actually have turned 11 years already. And you know where the liquid's going. You know it's going to get better. So typically, if you buy something at 10, you can exit at 15.
And we are looking at the bottling
directly. I'll go on to explain that. So my reasoning is twofold for the Speyside. One, it's of a decent age. It's already 10 years old. It's super powerful stuff. So I know that it's, although the figures that have been put on the website say it was 65 or 65.3, 65.6, that would have been on the filling date back in 2013. But generally, they're all filled into barrels. These are first fill bourbon barrels, good quality barrels. They actually come from an American cooperage that basically supplies a lot of the Bourbon distilleries. All the casks are transferred over to Scotland. So you've got that going for it. You've got the fact that there's a story about the distillery closing. It's not closing forever. Closing on that site, it's actually moving to an even nicer location. And they've got planning permission to build a new distillery, but it'll be a different name because it actually is not on the same site at all. So that's one of the reasons. The other casks that have been mentioned are Glen Spey, Glen Murray. Glen Spey is a nice Diageo brand. Mainly you'll find it in blends, but it's very popular with independent bottlers. Glen Murray is owned by a French company. And for the first time in the last 2 years, you'll find Glen Murray in duty free, which is great because they're starting to get out there. Also, these places are wonderful to visit as well. If you ever wanted to do that, let me know. I can organize a trip to any of the distilleries. And then through the investment in from Diversify, they bought a Glenbergie 2015, again, very popular with whiskey enthusiasts, and a Ben Nevis. Ben Nevis is kind of getting a bit of a cult status. And the fact is, you don't want to invest in the top brand names. I have casks, if you want it, from Macallan, Springbank, Dalmore, very collectible casks I have in stock, but they're generally at the high end and not really suitable for multiple investments. And if I can be so bold, they're really topped out already.
So you need emerging brands.
You need brands. If you compare it to football leagues in whichever country, it's like ones that are coming up. Those are the ones that you kind of want to put away for, let's say, a 5-year investment, not the top ones.
Yeah, and that's also why someone that knows the emerging brands and can not only identify, but build a relationship with them can be very powerful.
Yeah, and you can see the whiskey enthusiasts, which brands they go for, and they kind of know, but people are generally interested and generally want to learn. It's a big, we're a big community of whiskey lovers, and it's growing all the time, all over the world. Wherever I go, you find people.
Yeah. So shall we go to the next question?
Sure.
So in what ways do you believe investing in whiskey contributes to diversifying a portfolio, especially considering its historical performance compared to the traditional asset classes?
So alternative investments became popular, I'd say probably more than 20 years ago. You know, people have invested in everything from Danish 1950 furniture to period French furniture to impressionists to gold bars, gold coin stamps, you name it. People generally go to alternative investments with a lack of confidence in international markets. That's one reason. The other reason is they've already got investments. So they're invested in, could be anything from commodities to foreign exchange to stocks, shares, bonds, you name it. And they fancy investing in something else. The one thing about whiskey and a lot of other alternative investment classes is they are unregulated. The reason they're unregulated is no one really can second guess the market. So it was only recently, or over the last sort of 10, 15 years, that wine was not regulated, but had an index.
Mm-hmm.
But wine, as many of you might know, it matures in a bottle. It is a different asset class to casks. Casks, the product is still maturing in the wood. Wine is still maturing in the bottle. Completely two different things. And you've got a lot of flexibility with the casks. So any of you that are investing in wine, you know what you're getting. You've got to wait a few years. You take the bottles out of bond and you either drink it or sell it on. With whiskey, you can do a lot of things. You can let it ride, let it carry on maturing. You can put it into a different type of cask, or you can change the taste if you want to of the whiskey. If it doesn't turn out after 15 years how you want it, you can change it.
May I ask how you can change the taste?
You put it into a different type of wood. You're absolutely allowed to do that under Scottish law. And you can put it into a sherry cask or a rum cask, or if you're really advantageous, a nice wine barrique from Bordeaux.
So you have some more flexibility.
You have a lot more flexibility, and it certainly can last just as long as some top wines as well. So there is a lot of attraction to this particular industry. Alternative investments are varied. They are, I guess, more risky than ones that you can look up on Bloomberg, and they're not for day traders, as I said.
Yes, but the illiquidity can also return into, well, because the market is more opaque, because there's less day traders, it's often common to see that the opportunities in private markets can yield higher returns. But of course, it's at the cost of time, the cost of intransparency, and that's also why experts are necessary to handle this market.
We make it very easy. You know, casks are held in bond. They're held in warehouses, all in Scotland. By law, we have to mature the casks in Scotland. You cannot ship a cask, or you cannot ship whiskey, single malt whiskey, out of Scotland unless it's in a bottle. So it has to stay bonded in Scotland. And if you do want to bottle it, it's very easy. If we want to sell through the fund, again, there are multiple routes, and it's important. It's important.
Yes, yes, I completely agree. So regarding the diversification of my whiskey investment portfolio, what criteria should I refer to for diversification? For example, would the production location, the year, or even among distilleries make a difference when diversifying a whiskey portfolio?
Yeah, definitely does. So, and this is not exclusively to Konvi, but when people buy whiskey casks, they generally have to answer a few questions about, you know, what do they want to do with it? Are they buying it for grandchildren? Are they buying it for bottling and consumption? It could be a family wedding. It could be a company anniversary. And then you've got other people that are very clinical about it. They don't like even the smell of whiskey, and they're buying it purely for financial gain. And then you have another question, which is, right, when do you need the money? When would you like the money? So people have to make up their mind in their own, you know, understand in their own mind how long they want to keep it for and what kind of returns they want to do it. If someone buys whiskey that was put into a cask last week, you know, you're in for 10 years. Why? Because that whiskey's got to mature for 10 years. So I recommend that people buy different distilleries, people buy different ages, so they understand that there is diversification in the market. And that's why, you know, the casks that are available on this platform at the moment are diversified. There are quite a few different distilleries. Speyside Distillery 2013 was a good bet because it's already 10 years old, and I know that it'll be absolutely delicious by the time the platform matures. So
yeah, and then even though we do have a range of, let's say, locations or regions within Scotland or other countries that are being selected, each listing on Konvi would have still a blend of different casks from that region, so that there is some diversification there. But of course, Konvi does allow diversification by default, so it is always recommended to diversify across regions, I understand, based on
certainly the regions of Scotland. And you know, whiskey enthusiasts might have a different opinion. Whiskey people always have an opinion. It doesn't matter what you're investing in, but essentially we invest in casks from each different region across Scotland, from the Western Isles to Shetland to the Highlands, Lowlands, Speyside, of course. We want to make sure that we are presenting casks from lots of regions. As far as other world whiskies go, we do have some casks, especially English casks. But the fact is, diversification, if you've got good provenance and you know and you can read about the story of the distilleries and you can see the bottles on the market and understand their brand, as long as you've got all of that, diversification is really good.
Great. So apart from whiskey, we know CaskTrade also offers other spirits for investment.
Yeah.
So in the future, what spirits have the potential to become investment worthy and launch on the Konvi platform? Just before I let you continue on this, we have also received questions about rum into our Konvi community.
So rum's interesting. It's for those of you that are French, perhaps, you know, it's almost like, when will Armagnac have its day? So people talk about Armagnac and the value of Armagnac and the quality and the age of Armagnac. When will it be like cognac? You know, when will it get there? And I think this is a very long discussion. I'm a big fan of Armagnac, and we have supplied casks and bought them from 2 producers in France. And since Brexit, that's really difficult for us to do. But We do it, and it's very popular with our independent bottlers. It's the same with rum. Rum is something that you need to have some knowledge of from day one. Most rum is not matured in the tropics. And we have rum from Indian Ocean, Central America, South America, and of course the Caribbean. And most of it that comes to Europe that we find in bars, restaurants, shops, most of it's not matured there if it has any age because of the heat and the fact that the angels or the evaporation rate is really high. So a lot of people actually like to invest in rum if they know when it was made, where it was made from a young age, and how long it spent in the tropics. Most of the rum that comes to Europe either goes into the UK ports, Bristol, Liverpool, etc., or goes into ports in Europe, but it's matured in Europe because you can take some time. It doesn't evaporate so quickly. So my advice with rum investment is whatever you do, start young. Don't buy mature rum, and especially don't buy mature rum if you don't know how long it's been in the tropics, when it was made, and of course how it tastes. If you start investment in rum, start from the beginning of the journey. It will be the safest.
So have you supplied rum through CaskTrade?
Yeah, we have supplied only a little bit of rum. So we also sell to bottlers. So something like 50% of our business are bottlers. These are independent bottlers. Doesn't matter which country you come from, you will see some of our casks on shelves. They have an independent label and they represent a particular distillery. So it might say XYZ, based in Paris, and it will have a name like Glenallachie, distilled at Glenallachie, but the brand name would be La Maison de Whisky, for instance. So these are independent bottlers. They bottle also a lot of rum. And why I mention that is because a lot of the rum that I sell is already mature. We provide samples to everybody, so they get to try the rum or the whiskey before they bottle it. And that's why I say with rum, you've got to know what you're buying. Two different distilleries that we've had good experiences with. One is Worthy Park and the other one is Renegade Rum. Renegade Rum is owned and run by a whiskey guy who was a wine guy. His name is Marc Renier, and he is very particular about his rum. He literally knows which farm it came from, the farmer's name, the type of sugarcane, and how it matures. And then he puts it into all sorts of different types of barrels to mature, and it's super popular. So Renegade Rum, young, is well priced. And then some people offer things like very young Panamanian rum from a no-name distillery, and that would be awkward to exit.
I think that covered it.
Okay, sure.
So I think you already responded to this question already. The question was, why did you start investing in whiskey barrels? Is there anything else that maybe wasn't mentioned yet? One sentence that would, compress everything in one?
It was a simple thing, and it accounts for any market, whether you're involved or interested in any hobby. Once you get involved with a hobby, you get interested in it. Normally you would go and visit, spend time with people that are selling it, people that are interested. That's what I did with whiskey. So the whiskey market, even as young as 10 years ago, was very closed. It was only for whiskey enthusiasts, whiskey traders, and people that knew people. That was it. There was no one else involved. And because I've been a whiskey fan for many, many years, I could do it. And that's the only reason. And I really enjoyed it. I like the variety. And also, you cannot make the same returns easily and quickly with bottles. The administration is crazy.
Yeah.
You literally have to photograph and send bottles to different auction houses. It's crazy.
Yeah, logistically, it does sound much easier.
Yeah.
Yes. So what was your first whiskey investment?
Cask?
Cask.
Believe it or not, it was a 1978 Glenlivet cask. And I bought that many years ago. Glenlivet stopped selling them, tell you the truth. They just stopped because they didn't need to. They've got a fantastic brand name, and I got offered it, bought it, and I sold it 2 years ago.
That's a long time to mature.
Yeah, but it was a strong cask. I mean, it's the other thing as well. When you know about casks, you know that you have to have a strong ABV. You know how long you can keep it. When you sample it, you can tell whether it's ready, nearly ready, or ready. or not ready at all, I should say. You also look at the strength of the whiskey, and you need to make sure that it's of appropriate strength. You need to make sure that you've got a good color, good nose. Yeah, a lot of the people that work for me, they know how to do that, including myself. If you get a well-balanced dram, then it's a good one. And that was a good one. But it lasts for many years.
Yeah. So we're talking about over 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So which whiskey regions is CaskTrade currently focusing on? We've covered already a few. The question is also, what is the difference between these regions?
Oh boy, have you got 2 hours? It's very difficult to say. I mean, there are a couple of very distinctive regions. Islay, which is an island off the west coast of Ireland, of Scotland, is essentially gives a particular flavor profile, which is very peaty whiskey. Peaty is smoky, and some people will only drink smoky peaty whiskies. It's a particular flavor profile. I would say 80-90% of the distilleries on that island make that profile. Some don't. And then Speyside is very floral, very fresh. And a lot of the other distilleries can be heavy distillates, so heavy whiskey, certainly up into Sunderland, in the Highlands, Clynelish. So there are many different flavors, lowland whiskies. But, the regions offer themselves. I think it's a little bit more blurred nowadays, which means everybody is trying to do different flavors of whiskey, finishes of whiskey. So you could probably differentiate from the distilleries, not always from the regions.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. One more question. What is the difference between bourbon, Scotch, whiskey, and whiskey? And has there been any type that has outperformed the others? Wow.
Look, I'm a big fan of single malt whiskey from Scotland. I also love Irish whiskey, and there are a lot of other people out there that think that, and I don't disagree with them, that the Irish invented whiskey and it wasn't the Scottish. And they put the E between the K and the Y. So you've got Irish whiskey, you've now got New World whiskies. Again, I will draw the comparison to New World wines. You have huge number of distilleries all over Europe now, never really existed before. So I did a tour of Switzerland and saw 13 different distilleries. Belgium's got some, Italy's got a couple, France has got amazing whiskey. Germany, I mean, it's really growing. It's really growing. And then you've got some pretty crazy stuff that's being made in Scandinavian countries. Bourbon is very different. It's made in a couple of states in America. Well, certainly one that can only be called bourbon. It's got a different mash bill. It uses a different raw ingredient. And then there is differences in the way it's made. The stills. Irish whiskey can be pot still. And in Scotland, they don't really use pot stills. So, without going into a huge amount of detail, each region in the world has its unique selling points. I would say that brand-wise, it's got to be Scottish whiskey, followed by probably Irish whiskey.
Just because of the history.
Yes, and traditionally, the product has been drunk as a neat spirit. So people now are only starting to not mix, pure bourbon or rye whiskies. Typically, those whiskies were mixed with something like Coca-Cola. A lot of whiskey has always been appreciated neat. Yeah. And people kind of like that because you get the real flavor profiles. The stuff that we sell to any of our bottlers is the real deal. It's natural. It's not chill filtered. It's not watered down. Doesn't have any colorants, no sweeteners. It's from the cask to the bottle. And there are a lot of people that really appreciate that. Yeah. And, if anyone comes to me and has a tasting here in London, in our tasting room, I can convert them.
So putting Coca-Cola into Speyside whiskey would be like pineapple on pizza or ketchup on pizza?
Maybe marshmallows. I don't know. It's not. Look, people can do whatever they want. Even putting ice in single malt whiskey changes the flavor profile, mainly because of the chemical reaction and the temperature of the whiskey. If you want to put anything in single malt, natural cask strength whiskey, put a drop of water, open it up, dilute it a little bit to serve your palate and enjoy it. At least you're tasting something.
Yeah, I did taste, it was a little bit sweeter. That was at least my palate.
Yes.
And I'm not an expert in whiskey. How do you see the current whiskey market in terms of the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say that there are places in the world that restrict its importation, and there'll be more and more people enjoying it in the next couple of years. We've got whiskey groups now in South Korea, in Kuala Lumpur, so Seoul, Kuala Lumpur, and Hanoi in Vietnam that are loving single malt whiskey, and they were never customers before, never.
Interesting.
Mm.
So it's an up and coming spirit, you could
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So those were all the questions that were previously submitted that we selected. Well, we do have some questions in the chat. One would be just a confirmation. Ideally, would it better to keep the investment for 5 years in terms of whiskey?
So it all depends on which cask you choose to invest in. So if you invest in a cask that's 2013, by the time it reaches 5 years, it'll be, roughly 15 years old. I think that that's a good idea. I don't think that people should look at whiskey as a short-term investment. It needs a runway, if you know what I mean. Like an airplane to take off, it really does need a runway. There are other alternative investments, again, not wine, but there are other alternative investments that people might want to use in the short term.
We have a new question. So first of all, is the storage climate controlled?
No, it's not allowed. So the interesting thing is, one of the main regions of maturation of whiskey is Scotland. Why? It's because of its lovely, lovely climate. It does get hotter in the summers, but generally it's a very, very pleasant climate, and sometimes the rain comes in sideways. But Scotland's a perfect country for maturing whiskey. It's not too hot. Whiskey that's matured in India, because the Indians have started making whiskey, you can lose up to 20% of it per year. So it's not great. Same reason I was talking about it with rum.
So it's more expensive to mature in India.
It's more dangerous. But Scotland has a particular climate that is very well suited. Same with Ireland, tell you the truth, for whiskey. But you're not allowed to put air conditioning. In fact, most of these warehouses with alcohol that sits at 60% plus can't have any plug sockets. They've got to have special lighting. They're not allowed to have, they have special CCTV. They're not allowed to have any naked flame, big electrical outlet in the warehouse, because you can imagine at 60%, it'll go up.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. One more question. How does the appreciation actually happen in case there is a unique, there are few bottles that are unique that are produced? Is it the taste of the previous products?
Like wine, there are previous vintages that are better, but unlike wine, whiskey normally has age statements. So an 18-year-old whiskey would probably taste a little bit better than a 10-year-old whiskey, but not necessarily. And it goes on from there and carries on. It's not as prescriptive as something like wine. But essentially, price dictates bottles. So if you imagine, if you've flown through an airport recently and you've gone into duty-free, whether it's Heinemann or one of the big duty-frees, you walk down the corridors of the shop, you will start to see the prices at 10 years old, and you'll probably end up at the back of the duty-free, and you're looking at a glass cabinet, and inside there are 30 years or 25-year whiskeys. They're very, very expensive. They're rarer. The fact of the matter, again, is that most whiskeys are already drunk by an older age. So the older the whiskey, the rarer it is. It's not available. In fact, many distilleries in Scotland now have run out of stock that is between 18 and 21. It has run out. And there's only one way of refilling, and that is waiting for the other stuff to get old enough. You can't speed it up.
So 11 years sounds like a good vintage.
Exactly.
Interesting. So the fact that it's rare or very few bottles wouldn't affect the price in a negative way in any shape or form.
No, not at all. The only thing that you cannot do is you cannot take an appreciation of a young whiskey and exit at a young whiskey. And as I explained before, if you were to buy a whiskey that was filled into a wooden cask last week and you wanted to keep it for 3 to 5 years, the whiskey simply would not be ready for sale. That makes sense, because it would only be 3 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And as many people can appreciate that have ever been into a whiskey shop or duty free or look behind a bar, there are very few whiskeys behind a bar that are 5 years old.
Yeah.
They're older.
Yeah.
Unless it's a blend. If Johnny Walker Red Label and Ballantine's and all these blends that you put your Coca-Cola into, they're all much younger.
Yeah.
But much
Jack
cheaper.
Daniels.
Jack Daniels is definitely not single malt whiskey.
Great. So I think we covered everything, all of your questions, including the chat. Thank you very much for your engagement and for all of your questions. Overall, I think we've learned, well, at least I've learned quite a bit more about whiskey, although we do deal with whiskey on a daily basis. So thank you very much.
If you're whiskey enthusiasts, all I can ask you to do is visit Scotland. You'll love it. Go and visit a distillery, enjoy the rolling hills of Scotland, enjoy the Highlands. It is a beautiful country with a lot to offer. So this is my last word. I have spent many years traveling there. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of other places in the world, from Italy, France, all over the place. But Scotland is really quite different. You'd enjoy it.
And also the nature. Not the whiskey. It would make a great vacation. I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Simon.
Pleasure.
This was very insightful. I hope that you all learned something new about whiskey, and I hope this gave a little bit of an insight about how CaskTrade selects the asset that you will invest or have invested in, specifically the whiskey barrels that we currently have open or we just funded. And should you have any more questions, we'd of course be happy to pass them on. We have the community, the Discover community into our app, but also feel free to reach out to us anytime. We're available to answer any of your questions. And thank you very much. I think this was great. And we are looking forward to seeing you on the Konvi app and seeing the next whiskey investment that's going to be announced very soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.